Well, everybody, welcome to the Confused Breakfast Podcast. We have a special edition of a brunch episode today, but let me set the stage here. There are exactly 3 times in my life that someone caught me on social media and I just could not stop. Like where it drew me in and I could not get anything but all of this person's stuff. Number one, the first time it ever happened, Dogface 420, the skateboarder guy with the cranberry juice. Like he caught me at the right time, and I watched that video like 100 times a day. Number 2, old time hockey.
Yep.
The first time someone sent me old time hockey, I was like, This is it. This is for me. I'm going to watch all these videos every day.
That's the way I need to make my life. I've got it. Okay.
And then most recently, the third person that has ever made me feel this way, you've seen him on Instagram. His name is the Sunglasses Kid. And I'll tell you what, we've got Sunglasses Kid with us today, also known as Edward. The first video that was sent to me, and I know everybody out there has seen this, it was called POV. It's 1986, and you're riding your motorcycle through the night after an intense argument. Someone sent that to me, and I was blown away, drawn in. My life was complete. I found my person. It is so good to have you on the podcast, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I love that I'm up there with the cranberry guy who I read just got arrested recently. So
well, hold on. I mean, I'm talking about the 2020 version of him. Okay,
when things were going good,
cranberry guy. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, hey, and if you don't know who the Sunglasses Kid is, I want to read it straight from his Instagram. This is what he says. He says, producer making 80s pop and cinematic instrumentals with main character energy. You've seen it before, but we really want to know. I mean, we're going to get into our top 5 music moments in movie history. We know you're a movie buff, music buff, but really, we want to get to know you a little bit too. Like, how did this even come about? How did this idea that you're putting out into the world, how did this happen?
I've been making like music under this like name for like literally it's embarrassing. I've been doing it for like about a decade. It started out as a hobby, and I'm part of like a subgenre of music that's known as synthwave. And like last year, around this time last year, I had like 10,000 followers, which I've been like grinding over like 7 years on Instagram for that. I wasn't on TikTok. And I kept doing the same thing and expecting different results with like wanting to get more engagement. And I was following this woman. There's a couple of different women who do it. They're comedians. There's this woman called Retro Avocado, and she does this thing where she'll stand in front of a green screen and do like, it's the 90s. You're a 90s mom in your 90s kitchen. So she was doing these kind of like acts, and she was crushing it. And I was like, this is the kind of like audience. There's an audience for this like retro stuff. But how could it work in like a musical setting? So I spent a long time kind of trying to craft this idea. And the first one I did it when I was just joining TikTok, trying to work out like, if I go on TikTok, I'm going to have to show my face. I'm going to have to sit in front of a keyboard, and I need to do something that grabs attention. And the first one I did that started to go viral was, it was something like, you're running late. You're running late for your first job in the big city, and it's like 1985, and you're running late for your first job in the big city. And people were just going like, they were just loving it. They were like, oh my god, yeah, and you're spilling your coffee, and people were really like playing on with this game. And the more I like thought about it more, I was like, this is genius. People are like, it's 80s tropes. It's like, let's play 80s tropes in the comments. Like the trick is to never mention the movie. So I never like get too specific. It's always about never giving the punchline away. It's kind of, my rule is always like, the strap line could apply to at least 2 or 3 movies. It can't be like super specifically one, or it just kind of is no fun for the participants. And it kind of helped then like sell the music and this soundtracky thing, and it spoke to like my love of cinema and music. It just seemed to capture people, and I had everyone from like people in hip hop to like quite famous film composers and people reaching out to me in the DMs. It was pretty fucking wild last year. Yeah.
Wow,
that's amazing.
And then I went viral. I went viral, and in a year I went to like 380,000 followers, 370,000 followers on Instagram, and 200,000 on TikTok when I hadn't. And there's a lot of copycats out there as well. There's a lot of people people think of people who I get accused of copying the people who
copying them,
copying your copycats.
Yeah, it's kind of the memes run away from it, from myself, and from me now. You know,
full circle of just going viral. Essentially, you just got people who want to do what you do, and I mean, they say that's the ultimate form of flattery. Though, do you feel that way, or do you feel like, hey, get off my jam?
I think I would have been less less pissed off about it if I hadn't started getting the accusations that I was copying people. And there's a few new imitators who are like, just like literally now you're just actually copying my style of music as well as copying the caption and concept and everything. Like, I'm not saying I came up with the idea of captions, I came up with the idea of like POVs, but I feel like I know that I came up with that idea. And yeah, I don't know. There's a fine line between imitation and theft. Let's call it
Well,
that.
Oh, yeah,
But,
Sure.
I don't want to copy you, but I had to make sure I asked because I was trying to stitch with you, like do a duo with you on Instagram at one point. I was trying really hard, but I just couldn't get the delay right, and it didn't come out right. But I wrote a guitar solo to Major Heist,
nice.
and
brilliant.
I really do want to share it with you. I just got to be able to find a way to get it in there the right way. So
Yeah,
one
I
day,
don't
maybe,
know how anyone's doing it. They were like ripping it. I don't know how anyone does it.
I don't know how they're doing it either. It was honestly, I was so inspired. It was the first time I really tried to do anything with something like that, and I was like, I don't know how people do this. This is not what I'm meant to do apparently. But I just loved what you did so much with that song with Major Heist, and I've listened to a lot of the albums and of your stuff on Spotify too. And I mean,
Excellent.
yeah, it's all great stuff, man.
Well, all the music I dumped like last year because I was literally just demo dumping. I was writing tracks. Like the track that really went gangbusters on Instagram was, I literally wrote it in half an hour. It's just a 30-second idea. And I put out the most lackluster caption. I thought about it for 10 seconds. I went, it's 1989 and you're getting ready for a massive shootout in a warehouse.
Yes.
About half an hour later, I read there was a headline there'd been a mass shooting in America. And I was like, fuck, I'm about to get cancelled having done this thing. Maybe this is like really bad timing.
No,
And
it
then-
happens all the time over here. We're
It's
used
like-
to it. It's
happening
someone
right
pointed
now
that.
somewhere.
Someone pointed out if I waited for a clip for a day where there wasn't a mass shooting, I wouldn't be able to post anything.
it's super sad, but it's true.
Oh, it's very
I was wondering if like movie score influence was always a part of your music, or was it a thing that came about when you started gaining like kind of views? And on top of that too, I have to imagine that when you're writing these scores and you're writing these cues, that you have a movie in your head, like not maybe even a specific movie that's already made, but a movie that is just kind of rolling in your head that you're imagining as you write it.
Yeah, there's like a bit of, like I wanted to be a film composer, like literally since I was pretty young, and I gave it a shot and I decided I wasn't cut out for it and gave up the dream, and then left that kind of pursuing that pipe dream for like 15 years. And I started the Sunglasses Kid thing as like literally like a hobby. Just I was like, I'm done. I got a day job. I'm just doing this for fun. This isn't anything. But somehow I feel like it's like the film music DNA like somehow stayed in me, even though I wasn't trying to do it. But then, yeah, I started sort of, I suppose, leaning into it with the captions and everything. So, I think sometimes I like think of the caption first. I'm like, it's kind of like a cool mini brief. I'm like, oh, I want to do something that's a bit like that, or would invoke that vibe. And sometimes I just have an idea and I write it, and then I'll be sitting there afterwards going, what is this? What is this vibe? And I'll be like with my girlfriend going, what do we think this is? It's like when we did the running late in the big city one, it was like, you're running late for your first job. And my girlfriend goes, in the big city. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fucking hilarious. We were like, oh, big city. They're always talking about the fucking big city in the 80s like movies. So,
Small
so
town. kid
sometimes
moves
the
to
idea
big
comes
city.
afterwards and it just like, it works. And sometimes
fish out of water.
yeah.
For-
And like
into
I
the
did one
big
like
city.
another one that was like popular that I think I came up with the caption before I did the thing, but it's just the perfect trope was just like, you've been asked to hand in your badge and gun. And it's just like immediately like, you know what that fucking trope is. Like some just roll off the tongue. And when you see some of the imitators are getting laid, like they're very like heavy handed. They're like, you're in an alley fighting turtles and they're like, that's too much. You've gone too far. You need to know when to
I wonder what
rein it in."
movie they're trying to do.
Yeah. Oh wow. Oh my god, I'm having so much fun applying my own imagination to this one like scenario where I'm with the turtles and it's obviously fucking turtles.
I do have a question for you. What do you think it is about the 80s and this whole kind of revival of 80s music where it's the synth wave, the retro wave, the vapor wave? Like, you know, I'm a giant fan of the Midnight. We love them on this podcast. And the fact that they're blowing up and selling out stadiums around the world, like why do you think people are gravitating towards this old form of music, this warm 80s sound?
I mean, believe it or not, I mean, I sort of know the Midnight, and I started making music almost the same time as them. And this genre has been underground since about 2012, 2011. And so to be frank, I'm surprised it keeps coming around, the 80s thing, because I'm like, we've been on this 80s thing for fucking over 10 years. Surely we're going to move on to the 90s or the 70s or something. But I think maybe there's like a creative kind of restriction at the moment. Like, there doesn't feel like there's a lot of new stuff. I think there's a lot of nostalgia. There's maybe sort of people who remember the 80s or are nostalgic for the 80s because they're kind of 80s, 90s kids are kind of now in creative director roles or decision-making roles. They're commissioning games, they're doing podcasts, they've got the nostalgia for their childhood. And I think it'll be a cycle, and like another 10 years will come around. And then the big thing will be like Y2K vibes. I mean, you already see these nostalgia movements happening already, but I guess it's just kind of, to quote your movie behind your back of your head, it's our time. It's the Goonies. Right now is our time, but it keeps going. I think there's something special about it as well, especially with the music. It's just, there's just a vibe and an atmosphere that was so like positive. And I think maybe like in today's climate, with pick your existential threat that keeps you up at night,
right?
Like, I think it's maybe a nice place for like people to retreat to and kind of get back to like retreat into a world. And that's part of, I guess I do court that a bit, where I'm like, try to create a world, try to create escapism. I want to be a place that gets you away for a moment, for 30 seconds or for a minute, if you're doom scrolling, just to take your head out of things for a moment.
Well, and that's why I was drawn to you, and I know AJ and Sean feel the same way, is that's the idea of it. That's what we sell on this podcast, is the nostalgia of your favorite movies when you were young. It's that idea of that the most crazy thing in your life is that you're moving to the big city and I don't know anybody and what's going to happen. Like, that was the craziest thing that ever happened to you. And now it's everything else that we deal with. So
for some reason, that music like makes it feel better. Even if you are like literally in that situation, the music that you create makes that situation feel awesome.
You're handing in your badge and you're like, well, it's pretty fun to hand in my badge.
I've always said that. It's like, going for a job interview or being late for work in real life is fucking stressful. But in the 80s, it's like, doom, 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 doom. You're like, fuck, I'm running late. Oh no, my train. Oh, man.
It says in the script that I do make it. So
it says in the script I get there eventually, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's a good point, shot. No, I think that is a big thing. I do want to make mention of that more so than anything. It's amazing how I think that's the biggest thing to commend on what you do, and the way that you do it is because if you really are caught in that scroll or something, and you come across one of your prompts that pops up on the screen, and then it forces you to turn up the volume, and then immediately somebody for like 25 seconds, they literally like, I know that happened to me one time when I saw one of your things. Now I need to listen to it again because I missed like the first 5 seconds of it. And then you just realize I just listened to this for like 3 solid minutes of the same 30 to 40 second clip over and over. And to be able to like stop people in their tracks like that, man, I just think that's such an awesome thing. Like it's so spot on what you'd end up doing.
Oh, thank you. Well, that was one of the things I realized when I was, especially on TikTok, because I think when I started doing it, I don't even know that Instagram was just shy of copying TikTok, where it keeps playing when you're reading the comments, because they hadn't implemented that yet. But the whole thing about TikTok, I was like, of course, this is like accidentally even more awesome than I realized, because now everyone's playing read each other's comments. So not only are you trying to come up with your own clever like little take on the thing, now you're in the comments, and there's people like writing fucking whole screenplays. There's people being like, his name's Detective
awesome.
John, he's on the case, and people are like getting really into it. And there's like, I've seen like sub-threads with like 20,000 likes, and like there's like 15 people like writing a movie in like just one comment
amazing.
Going down. It's like,
you know what?
Of comments say.
I'm probably one of those people. I just did that. I just did that when I saw that Nick Cage was supposed to be the noir Spider-Man or something. And I saw that, and I was just like, it's just like, her name's Gwen Stacy. She sat down on my desk. I knew from the moment she knocked. And I imagine your music playing in the background of Nick Cage doing this monologue on a noir. It's like, come on, man. Like, it's spot on. I love that people are doing that, though.
Yeah,
Sean, why aren't
really
you doing that?
I don't know. I couldn't come up with it. It was so late. I couldn't come up with anything.
Well, for anybody out there, if you obviously follow him on Instagram and TikTok, but I know your new single just came out called Major Heist, right? That's part of a full album that you're dropping soon, right?
Yeah. So when I was going viral last year, I wasn't ready to release any music because I was like kind of like kicking out these 30-second demos into the world, and then I was getting a lot of attention, and there were points where I thought I was holding back on releasing stuff because I got into some quite high level conversations with some really quite big producers in the rap world. And there was a lot of conversations and a lot of things nearly happened. And then toward the end of the year, I was like, I don't know if this is actually happening. So I've kind of, it's all calmed down. I'm now in the kind of simmering stage of what was like a major fire lost year of activity. So, but yeah, so a lot of people like, I should have struck a little bit whilst the iron was hotter than it was, because if I dropped stuff when it wasn't like ready to go. So now I've been in the last kind of few months trying to kind of finish those pieces and turn them into full tracks, because people are going on my Spotify and finding a quite different sound to the stuff that they've kind of known me for on social. So I'm not able to. I have had like a dedicated fan base of like a few thousand people for several years. But I'm suddenly having to journey like completely like suddenly 350,000 people who'd never heard of me 2 days ago to suddenly kind of bring them on board in the world that I'm in. So yeah.
By the way, I just looked you up on Spotify. 95,000 monthly listeners. I think that's about to probably bump up like crazy, 100%. And that's pretty huge in itself.
Well, I was on that was like 30,000 last year, 15,000 or something.
Wow.
I mean, I definitely think that going crazy on social media doesn't necessarily immediately translate into activity in other places, because this is the thing that people learn the hard way. They think they're going to be a famous influencer, and then they go and book out a meet and greet and no one shows up when they got like 5 million followers. So I'm like, don't necessarily think, just because some person follows, I think of it myself. I'll be like, oh, look at that dog. Yeah, I'll follow that person. Then I'll forget all about them. I'm not like, when's their next dog video dropping? I better get the fucking merch. So I'm like, not everyone gives a shit about me just because they liked and followed me. There'll be people who care, and then there's people who just went, lol, and then forgot about me. So,
it's a numbers game. We're in the same boat as you, man. Like, we wish that everyone that watched our viral videos would listen to our podcast, and it's what, like 1%, half of a percent that will actually go, wow, it's a podcast, I want to listen to it. It's a numbers game. It's same as you, man.
I always have a question when we get to talk to just good creative people, like you were talking about trying to build up, work on the music and trying to really push it out and finish things. And I always like asking, when it comes down to it, what makes you decide that there's a stopping point with your music? I think that's one of the hardest things when you're writing a song, especially when you have kind of endless resources kind of at your fingertips there with your keyboards, the computers, like everything that you can do, right? Like, what is there a point that you just realize, oh, I'm good to stop, like I'm ready to release that?
I mean, I think like in having my own set of like creative rules, my kind of like Dogma 95 of music is kind of saying, well, I'm already restricting the choices by going, can't use that sound, can't go there, can't do that, can't do this. That's the rules. So because that's not 80s enough. Oh, that's too 90s. Or that's that's a little bit too early 80s. So I'm already restricting down choices in that respect. But I guess I don't know. Sometimes you just have to just pick a moment and go, right, there's nothing more to add to this. You've said everything. If you keep going, you're going to ruin it. And also, I guess like last year, I was doing it a bit before last year, but just having the courage to just dump demos. I think too many musicians spend a lot of time finessing and I'm going to put the final touches on my masterpiece, and then I will be ready to unleash this on the world. And then their butt hurt when it doesn't get the attention they want it to get.
That's a great
and
point.
you feel really hurt because you've spent hours and hours of your life finalizing and perfecting this masterpiece and keeping it secret and getting ready for this big grand day. And the grand day comes and you're just a second in the feed of people getting 40,000 songs on Spotify. So if you're actually just going, do you know what? I was going to put out an idea. I spent half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on it. I'm ready to kill the baby if people don't like it.
Yeah.
Not that bothered if people do like it. And you get this immediate feedback. It's like, okay, I didn't think people like this, but they seem to be loving this way more than I realized. Maybe they like more of that. So it's kind of like not quite crowdsourcing. I'm not doing it to try and please everyone, but I'm kind of getting like iterative feedback. So I was using social media like a laboratory, kind of testing ideas and seeing what kind of stuck and realizing, well, I'm onto something if I go down this road. And as much as I wanted this to be the thing that people like, actually they don't seem to gel with it as much. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. That's awesome to hear.
That sort of happened to us. Like we were like, oh, we want people to hear our really good analysis of this movie and what it really meant. It turns out, oh no, they want to hear how does Nicolas Cage's character go from movie to movie to movie and he's in the same universe. Like,
right.
That's what they want to hear. We're like,
C, D, E, F, G.
It goes in the file. I was wondering, 'cause you said towards the beginning of this that you wanted to be a film composer. Has anybody reached out to you, and have you done any films, or that you can talk about at least?
One thing, somebody reached out to me last year, and I almost couldn't talk about it, but I still can't quite.
Okay.
And it has happened.
Awesome.
whoa.
So but it's like not a full scoring job, but a AAA composer reached out to me and said, I'm working on a couple of movies. Are you interested? And I actually didn't initially recognize the name. I went on their Instagram and I was like, composer of this movie, this movie, this. And I was like, the fuck? And I was like, yeah, sure. Had a phone call with this person. And they were like, yeah, I've got a couple of movies I'm working on. One of them's this and one of them's this. Are you interested? And I'm like, yes. Yeah. And it was kind of doing like synth arrangements. So it was kind of 80s-ing up like a score.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
And it's very like quite a big movie that's coming out, I think this year, maybe around summertime. Yeah.
Incredible.
So it was, and it's pretty wild, but yeah, it was a baptism of fire doing it.
Yeah.
It was quite a kind of crazy experience, which, yeah. So
Well, Once we know about it, once it comes out, we'd love to have you back and talk about it. That'd be
I'd love
awesome.
to come back and tell you because it's wild that there was I could almost tell you about it, but there's
I get it.
another musician that I got involved in it, who's also like an icon. And it was just the weirdest like thing where I brokered a deal between these two like quite big people because I kind of knew both of them. It was I'd love to tell you more, but I can't.
That's so
I
exciting.
cannot wait to hear more about it as it comes around, man. That's awesome.
Well, everybody's here to hear. You know, we gave you the topic of this. We said we want to talk top 5 music moments in movie history, and just to reiterate how important we talk about movies on this podcast. That's what we are, a movie podcast. But we so often talk about what the music of these movies do to the movie and what they do to us. And I think this is a topic that everybody listening can get behind because there are certain songs that are great and there are certain movie scenes that are great. And by themselves, they're cool. They're really awesome. But for some reason, you put them together and it is just pure magic. And I think that's sort of the idea that I took behind my list of just moments where movies and music and film came together to affect me in a just incredible way. Is that the way that you took this assignment?
That is, yeah. And it's absolutely like a thing where I look back on like movies that I loved over my childhood and you kind of go, what have all these movies got in common? And sometimes I'll be like, yeah, they're all James Horner movies. They're all like fucking like the same composer. And I'll often realize like some of the most like amazing moments in a movie will be like, you realize when you analyze it, you're like, oh my God, it's the score that's doing it, or it's the song or something. I think sometimes like songs is a different beast from score, and I guess we'll cover a bit of both. But yeah,
and actually, good point on that. We're open to an actual song that was pre-recorded, and music and lyrics. We're also open to score. This is a broad-ranging topic here. It can be from the 80s, 90s. I kept mine below the 2000s, but we're open to everything. Everything is available for this game. So I think what we'll do is we'll go round table. I'll start us off on 5. How about that?
Okay. Yeah.
All right, my number 5. I'm a very what do you call it? It's like an actual song with lyrics. Can we just call that a a song, not
Yeah,
a score.
sure.
Okay, that most of my list is going to be that. Okay, that is how I live. You know, Breakfast Club. Don't you forget about me. Like those are the moments that affect me. But there are some movies where the score is just so powerful to me. And my number 5 is actually Gladiator. And it's Hans Zimmer, of course, with one of the most incredible scores. In particular, the song Honor Him. It's played multiple times, but at the part most people are going to remember is at the very end when he does actually pass away. You can hear this string arrangement of just like, I'm not a composer. I like what I like, but like it's just raw, sad emotion that is put into the strings by Hans Zimmer. And like I cry every time at the end of that movie because of what the score does to this scene. I love that movie. I love Hans Zimmer. Anything he touches.
Is those vocals too?
Right.
Woman is just incredible.
And she's singing in another
Lisa
language.
Gerard.
Oh yeah.
Lisa Gerard from Dead Can Dance, I think is the name of the band that she was in before.
Oh wow.
Zimmer
Okay.
got her on board. Yeah.
And I think she's singing in Italian or something like that. And so you don't even know necessarily what she's saying, but you know what she's saying. Like and that I love it. I love it.
It's amazing.
Sean, number 5, what do you got?
I'm gonna go. This is a musical cue, and this is probably, I don't know. It's one of the best ones. I think anybody could maybe say that. I got to go with the Trio by Ennio Morricone for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And it's not like the Metallica intro. It's not that cue, but it is just the build up to their kind of final standoff, I guess. And it's Sergio Leone just doing those quick cuts of like the eyes and like this person's eyes and that person's eyes and then like their gun belt, and the music just complements it so well. It's so intense, and then it just kind of culminates to just one gunshot that happens. It gives me chills every time. That whole score is just incredible to me. I love it so much. But yeah, just an absolute classic, and I can't get enough of it at all.
All right, let's go to AJ. We'll save our special guest for last. AJ,
Okay.
number 5, what do you got?
I'm going to start here since you guys are kind of doing, feels a little bit more scory to start almost. I'm going to start with a score as well. And that is John Carpenter's The Thing with John Carpenter. I wanted to know too, and I'll let you
That's actually
say your piece.
Ennio Morricone as well.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say it's Morricone. Yeah.
Boom. All right. Well, then I'm in perfect company.
There you are.
But I there's something about it that it just sounds like the push start screen on a video game, and to me, and it's just that very droning din, 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 that I have that's ingrained in my brain. And throughout that entire movie, it seems like it's always there, but you at other times you don't realize it's there, and that's what I really, really love about a good score. Especially, I'm not a big horror fan, Mr. Sunglasses Kid. I'm not a big horror fan. Sean is. He gets me into these things, and The Thing became this movie that, like, I fell in love with, and like I revisited it so many times trying to figure out the ideas of the movie, and listening back to that soundtrack constantly, it just became a part of my brain. So I will say The Thing, John Carpenter and Ennio Morricone. So
Good call. What's your number 5?
Is 5 like least?
5 is
Top note?
technically, like we're building up to your number 1 favorite.
Oh, okay, all right. 5
good
was
call.
I realized beforehand I never got to 5 on my list, so I'm gonna shoot entirely from the hip, and let's say that number 5 is gonna be "Push It to the Limit" from Scarface, which is the money making montage music by Giorgio Moroder. Who, if you like, once you notice Giorgio Moroder does this in every fucking score, he's always got a bit that goes do 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 do, and it's like in everything. It's in like Never Ending Story. It's in Scarface. But what a great! I love. It's like an excellent montage in that. It's storytelling. Like by the end of that montage, they've gone from A to B, from like being kind of low level to kind of this opulent life of crime with the. Yeah, and it's been memed so hard now. It's just the money counter meme, and them on the phone laughing is like everyone uses that for every time there's like a money making opportunity. Jay.
That's perfect.
Love
man. I love that song so much. It pumps me up. Makes me like, I need to get into business.
It feels like something that they wrote for like Team America 2 or something. Yeah, half the time, you know what I mean?
But Scarface, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great call, and I think that brings up why the 80s feels so special a lot of times is that idea of the montage and how cheesy it is, but yet how perfect it is for the movie and the storytelling, and that kind of leads into my number 4.
One more thing.
Oh,
I feel like now you need to make a POV of you're hanging out with your tiger, you have a stack of cocaine next to you, and you're counting your money.
You're counting your drug money.
My number 4 is actually a movie we just did, and it's so fresh on my brain that I can't leave it off this list. It's actually Donnie Darko, which, of course is not an 80s movie, but it takes place in the 80s. In my brain, the head over heels montage that happens here when he gets off the school bus is one of the most iconic scenes in movies. And the issue not the issue. Tears for Fears is incredible on its own. Like Tears for Fears was probably the first band I ever obsessed over as a kid. That my parents gave me like a 7-inch of like Everybody Wants to Rule the World and Shout, and I think I played it so much that it just broke and wore out. And so I've always loved Tears for Fears. I've always loved Head Over Heels. But then when for some reason, you put it with this movie and this scene, I probably think about it once a week for my entire life. I'll just be like, Head Over Heels and Donnie Darko. I just love it. And I'll pull it up on YouTube, watch it, and then I'll move on with my day. That's my number 4. I don't think you can have a list like this without that song.
I'm going to guess Tears.
Literally,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, literally, last week I was at the cinema. I saw a re-screening of it at the
Oh,
cinema
wow.
literally last week with a friend of mine who's a singer. And
Nice.
that moment is so iconic. There's like a camera still, right, as he gets out of the bus. And
Correct.
it's a great establishing shot.
It's I'm gonna guess that Tears for Fears probably made at least an extra like cent and a half off of me for how much I played that song the last like couple of weeks off of Spotify. So you're welcome, Tears for Fears.
Hit us up, okay?
Hit us up.
Sean, what do you got for 4?
I'm going to go a song with this one. I believe this is a cover of a cover, maybe. I think the Animals did this originally, maybe Nina Simone, I'm not sure, but it is Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood by Santa Esmeralda, and it is from Kill Bill, Volume 1. It's when she's fighting Oren Ishii in the snow outside of her like compound or like that bar or whatever, and it's just one of the best. Like, I think the original is kind of more mellow, and this one's just like really, really pumped up, and like it's very Spanish influenced. I don't know. In the climax of that, it just kind of ends the song as, spoiler alert, something happens to Oren, and then it just kind of goes to another musical cut after that. There's something about it where it just gives me chills, and I can't listen to that song without thinking about that scene. It's just incredible. I love it.
Nice. AJ, number 4. What do you got?
Number 4, I am going to take this. I'm going to take this to real hard 80s, 80s with capital 8. This is "Send Me an Angel" on Rad. That's by Real Life. I believe
Yes,
the artist.
it is.
Real Life. "Send Me an Angel." When they do the bicycle boogie, I rewound that so much just to listen to the song and watch them and be like, I should get a BMX bike. Like that's what I thought my life was going to be for at least, 7 minutes after watching this scene on repeat. But it's that and the vocals for them, it's like the best kind of haunting. I don't know. It's like the only way I can describe it. It's but it's that big kick in is what I think really sets it off, and I think it even happens when Crew Jones jumps over the camera. It's that open fire, and that is such a freaking vibe and hit, man. I love it so much. "Send Me an Angel" in Rad by Real Life.
Hell yeah.
Is Rad the one that's got John Farnham's "Break the Ice" at the start?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Thunder in Your Heart.
Oh, what fucking banger that is. That's so good.
That soundtrack is it's it's so good, and I could pick any of those songs out of that movie.
Yep.
But that was one that was so big for me. Yes.
All right, what do you got for number 4?
It's me.
Yeah, you're up.
You're on.
I'm gonna go like it's my third favorite film of all time, Point Break.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna say like there's two like amazing music cues. One is like, to go technical, a diegetic music cue, which is a pop song, it's the scene when Keanu Reeves is telling Laurie Petty, he's trying to convince her to get her to teach him to surf, and he comes into the cafe that she works in, and playing underneath is this song by Sheryl Crow called now I'm trying to remember the name of the song. It'll come to me. And it's like playing and building up, and then it kind of goes from sounding like it's on the radio to then like
hundreds of tears
soundtrack, hundreds of tears. Thank you, Sarah. My mind went blank. And I don't think the track ever got a proper release, but it's an absolutely banging track. And then the other bit of music that is just the score is Mark Isham. It's like the opening scene where it's just the waves and the ocean and the surfers, and it's intercutting between that and Keanu Reeves shooting the targets. And it's the way the score is just like, it's these ambient glassy synths, and it's got these kind of like military drums and these timpanis. It's kind of like the cop kind of ushering the sort of cop vibes, and these swelling brass. And it's just a perfect like establishing shot. There's no dialogue, and it tells you everything about the themes of like the serenity of the ocean, the spirituality, like the gun violence, the action. It tells you so much about what is to come in this foreshadowing with saying nothing. It's all just done in imagery. And it's just super ambient. I love it.
Incredible pick.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
My number 3, I'm going to go about as 80s as you can go in my mind. This is a song that I don't feel like anyone knows. I don't feel like this song ever like came out. I've tried to look for it. I guess people know who this artist is. I don't know. But in this movie, this song is everything to me. It's from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, one of my favorite movies of all time, when they finally come to the future world. And they land, and they're like, "What's going on?" And that totally excellent music is playing. It's by an artist called Robbie Robb, or two B's, Robb, and the song is called "In Time." And there's something absolutely magical about that song and what it's doing. Because remember, the idea behind this is that is them. They wrote this song in the future, and that it saved mankind, and it brought the world together and aligned the planets. And in my brain, sometimes when I listen to that song, I'm like, you know what? If everyone did listen to this song, I think the planets would align, because it's just so beautifully, perfectly 80s. If you ever get a chance, look it up. Robbie, Robbie, Robb, In Time, and just listen to it, and your life will be better. I promise.
I love that.
Excellent.
I love that.
Number 3, Sean, what do you got?
This is one of my favorite scenes of all time, and it's kind of cheating because it's kind of 2 songs. But I have to do it. It's one scene at least. It's Boogie Nights, and it's Sister Christian, Night Ranger, and Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield. It may be my favorite scene of all time. I can't get enough. Molina, I forget his first name in it.
Alfred Molina.
Yeah. Incredible performance. The one scene that he's in, just unhinged, crazy. He's like, "You like Rick Springfield?" I like how he's talking about the music. You said diegetic, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's like when it's like the radio. It's like the actors, the characters could hear it if they were there.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love how that music literally just kind of influenced that scene, and he's going crazy because of that music, and he's obviously on so many drugs, but it's such an intense scene. It's such a funny scene. It's just got everything. It's one of those scenes I talk about on the show sometimes where I'll just look up the scene just to feel good and watch it, just because it's so good.
I love that.
But those songs really, really elevate that scene a lot, and yeah, I love it.
AJ, number 3.
I'm gonna put this here, even though it is my favorite movie of all time, but I am gonna put it here at number 3, and that is "Don't You Forget About Me" in Breakfast Club.
I knew you were gonna put it on there.
You knew. You guys knew. Come on. But here's the thing: is there's so much of that song that exists in that movie that doesn't exist almost like in our world. And it's so much of that B-roll in the beginning. And it's a very toned down version, and it's just kind of letting this like play underneath almost. And I wish I had that version, this full version of how it really cuts in, about how you, like when you're listening to Brian talk over these scenes, and then it cuts in, and then it finally really breaks in with the full song, and then of course the full song at the end. I think it's one of the most iconic mixtures of of scenes like that, and music that shouldn't have even been played by the band that played it. You know, it was such happenstance that they decided I guess we'll play this song. That's basically what Simple Minds did.
Yeah.
They didn't even want to play it, and like it was meant for somebody else, and they did. They came through, and honestly, it's the best work they've ever done. So yeah, I think if we're going to do this list, we can't do the list without mentioning that, and honestly, everything else that goes along with it in the movie. So yeah, Breakfast Club with "Don't You Forget About Me."
Agreed.
Good call. SGK, you're up with number 3.
I'm going to go for what I consider this second greatest movie ever made, or my favorite movie of all time is Heat. And
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
the score by Elliot Goldenthal. Heat is an insane score of like existing tracks, and then like underscore by Elliot Goldenthal. Bastard hard to get online, and I found this insanely rare limited triple CD release of it.
Oh, wow.
But the opening piece of music that sets the stage when De Niro's kind of just arriving at the off the train and going to steal the ambulance. But then this same piece of music comes back later, and it's this scene where he's on the run. He's kind of got away with it, and he's with the actress who plays Edie, his kind of love interest, and they're in the tunnel, driving through the tunnel, and there's this like amazing white light. And then he gets the call from John Voight's character saying he's tracked down Waingro, and Waingro's in this hotel, and this is the character that's double-crossed De Niro. And De Niro's got this decision to make. Is he going to drive away clean, or is he going to go after Waingro? And the music just does this key change. And it's just this marriage of the music, and De Niro does this storytelling just with his face, where he just tells this, and you just looking at him, you're like, shit, he's going to do this. He's going to do it. And he just quickly like pulls hard right and comes out of this tunnel, and you're like, it's that moment where you know it's all going to be fucked. And the score is so ambient and so low key, you don't almost realize it's doing what it's doing. If you rewatch that scene and just really pay attention to what the score is doing, it's so beautifully done. It's just a peak moment in cinema.
I'm really happy a Michael Mann movie is your second favorite movie, and just even on this list, because I have the soundtrack to Thief, which is Tangerine Dream.
Yeah,
and
great.
I think that I think of Michael Mann, and I think of like that the lighting that he has in his movies, especially Miami Vice and Heat. But then I just think of Tangerine Dream as well. But it's so synonymous with it. I just can't think of it without thinking of them.
Yeah, definitely.
Good call. All right, we're on to number 2. My number 2 is a question of how sometimes is the music so good that does it make an average movie that much better? Like I question it sometimes. This movie, Vanilla Sky, is actually one of my favorite movies. Okay, good, thank you. But sometimes
Hard agree on that. Fucking
but
hard agree.
sometimes
It's an amazing
question-
soundtrack.
Yeah, and I question, is it actually that good of a movie if you completely replace the soundtrack? Okay, we're in agreement here.
It's like a mid to good movie.
Yes.
It's kind of emotional and good in places, but the selection of songs, like Cameron Crowe is just on it with his track listing. And you're right, Vanilla Sky's soundtrack is amazing.
Yep, and in particular for me, it's the final 2 songs. It is a moment that affects me in my life of him making it to the rooftop, finding out what happened to his life, making the decision. It's 2 songs. It's the instrumental called Elevator Beat by Nancy Wilson, that guitar. Yep. Just in a weird time signature that just does something karmically, cosmically to my body when I hear it. And then it fades into one of my favorite atmospheric bands of all time, Sigur Rós.
Sigur Rós, yeah, I know the track.
Yeah. Dude, and so it initially was like a demo. It was called The Nothing Song, and it was just a weird live version that they used in the movie that became so popular they re-recorded it called Nazivlin or something like that. But that particular song I think is the best song they've ever written. And it fits so perfectly at the end of this movie that you take those 2 songs and you put it in the scene, and that's probably why I keep talking about the movie in 4 years in this podcast, is because I just love the soundtrack so much. So that's my number 2.
Hell yeah, man.
Sean, what about you? 2?
We'd be remiss. I mean, we tried with The Thing, but we have to do a John Carpenter score on here, and it's got to be, for me, Assault on Precinct 13. It's so like it kind of introduced us kind of Carpenter scores, I think, and how bombastic they can be and how much they just kind of take over the movie, and how, like we say, they would not be the same without his scores, without him doing pretty much everything on the movie. Just that dun 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 dun. It's so amazing, and like even I'm sure it seems to me like someone could listen to that and be like, oh, what song is that from? Hall & Oates or something like that. Just being like, that is something that's of the zeitgeist of just music, not just a movie score, right? Like, no, that is from Assault on Precinct 13 by John Carpenter. I love how his music can kind of transcend just being the movie, and you can just listen to it, kind of like your music, where you just like driving and listening to it. It makes me feel good, and it's Assault on Precinct 13, which we have to cover,
Of course.
sometime.
Of course.
Okay.
We still haven't done Heat yet, too. So let's
Yeah.
just
also
throw that
travesty.
on the table.
And Sunglasses Kid, I need you to tell these guys how good Cobra is for me real quick before you go.
It is good. Especially the inexplicably random moment where Sylvester Stallone cuts up pizza with a pair of scissors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I gave that movie an 8, and these guys were a little lower. than
Hey,
me,
it's
but-
okay. It's okay.
Sorry.
You're
I
like,
just-
it's like a 7, but you're always like, snips it. Okay, make it an 8. That is 1 star right there.
oh.
AJ, what's your number 2?
Oh gosh. I had to go back and forth between my number 2, so I'm just gonna cheat and kind of make mention of both of them for you guys. I wanted to make mention of Beverly Hills Cop like really bad, but then I realized like I'm throwing away one of the greatest composers, Bill Conti, and it's for Rocky. So I'm gonna give it to Rocky.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. Beverly Hills Cop was great. There's like a bunch of composers I think that actually worked through that that series of movies, but I'm going with Rocky, and just kind of overall, like, Bill Conti putting that music to the original Rocky movie, like when a composer takes a movie or takes a piece and they're able to completely redo it and emote completely different feelings in different parts of movies by taking it down, changing it from minor to major, vice versa. Slow it way down. Let's do it on a piano. Let's not do it on a electric guitar. Like whatever it is, that's the kind of stuff that like really gets me. I really pay attention to. And Rocky, I think, is a great I think that's a great example of that. So, and honestly, all the music throughout Rocky is great. I mean, even all the way into 4, like Burning Heart, like is
Well, obviously.
Hearts on fire. Yeah.
Hearts on Fire.
Hearts on Fire. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Hearts on fire.
Yeah. On desire. Yes.
That shit's fire.
It's so good, and like, and you're listening to that like that almost that synthy, like that kind of drop in the. That's a great
It's a
drop when
complicated
he's.
piece of music. That
It
really
is.
complicated. Yeah.
And it's a great piece over that juxtaposition of him working out in the wilderness and Drago in the facility or whatever. So, anyways, I could go on for days on Bill Conti, Rocky, and all the great music inside of that. So that's what it is, guys. Just say Rocky for my number 2. It's
Rocky's
fine,
number
guys.
2. All right, we got to hear your number 2, and then we're on to number 1.
My number 2 has got to be like the most 80s music moment ever, and comes with a kind of like my little cool story, which is I Still Believe by Tim Capello, the sexy sax man in the opening of Lost Boys.
Sexy sax man.
And weirdly, I've got to know Tim Capello over the last
Really?
Oh,
couple
wow.
of years.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
And we worked together. We did a song back on one of my other older albums the song's called Never Ending Dream. It was actually a song that wasn't planned to have Tim on it at all. And it was with a singer. And then Tim, I got his email address randomly through somebody who'd had him on as a guest on a podcast. And then I've got to know him, and we're working together again at the moment. And we, on some new stuff for the album. So I'm hoping that Capello's Sexy Sax will be back. But that opening track, I think, like that moment is like the most 80s moment ever when he's on the stage on the boardwalk. They've just arrived. The main characters have arrived to Santa Carla, and they're like, it's like the most awesome place in the fucking world. Like burning barrels and people headbanging and shit. And you're like, Tim Cabello looks like a fucking wrestler. And what's crazy is he still tours now. He goes around on his own. He drives around solo with the saxophone across Middle America, playing dive bars, playing different venues, still like does the meetups with the cast and stuff. And he was like known only really for Lost Boys, but he was Tina Turner's sax player.
Right.
That's
all
right.
throughout the 90s. And if you watch, there's some great music videos. If you love Capello and his sexy sax stuff, he's in like the music video for One of the Living on Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and the other Mad Max song, We Don't Need Another Hero. Both of those are Capello, and he's in like the same outfit with the chain and the
makes
grease and the
sense.
ponytail, being fucking badass. So, and he's a really awesome bloke. I've spent many an hour on the phone to him.
Oh, that's great to hear, man.
That actually reminded me that because Joel Schumacher did Lost Boys, right? He was the director.
right, yeah.
He also did St. Elmo's Fire, where there's another saxophone scene in there. And so AJ came up with the idea for a T-shirt that is Joel Schumacher is a saxist.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna roll with that. That is copyrighted.
I mean, just to say, if when it came to the honourable mention question, St. Elmo's Fire would definitely be on there as one of the honourable mentions of an absolutely banging soundtrack.
oh hell yeah!
Absolutely. What's the song? What's their main song on that?
St. Elmo's Fire
Well-
by John Parr.
It was no.
Leave a man in motion.
Man in Motion. That's just like
And the craziest thing about that story is that he was like contracted to write a song for St. Elmo's Fire, and he had writer's block. And there was something he was like watching like the Olympics, and there was a guy who was a wheelchair user, and he just wrote a song about him. And then he like retrofitted. The reason was like, it's like a man in motion. It's like about the wheelchair, and he's like, they drive a car in the movie. It's about the car.
I know.
Literally, it's like the wildest.
It was a massive hit.
That's what I was looking for. Sorry, I didn't mean like Man in Motion was what I was like hunting
Man in
for.
Motion. Man in
Yeah.
Motion.
Inspiration can come out of nowhere, you know.
Sorry, you're right. It is called Man in Motion, not St. Elmo's Fire. But, yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
All right, we've made it to our number one. So these are our number one favorite music moment in movie history. Mine may seem a little out of place to some people, but it's very important to me. It was actually the first time I ever bonded with Sean Pryor over here.
Here we go.
The Big Lebowski, which is just a banging soundtrack anyway. But in particular, at the very end, you get a Dead Flowers. It's a cover, Rolling Stones cover by Townes Van Zandt. And you take this incredible song that I have loved all my life by the Stones, and you give it this different happy, sad vibe in this happy, sad moment of the movie where we don't really... Like, a lot of things happened, but also nothing happened. And dude's just being the dude here. Something is unbelievably special about that moment. It's kind of like the Warriors. Like, I like the Warriors, but then when it ends on that musical moment of In the City, I immediately bump it up 2 points. And the same thing happens for me in Big Lebowski. I love the movie, but then it becomes one of my favorite movies of all time when you end with this moment of Dead Flowers. And I think it'll always probably be my number one. I just always think it will be.
It's a great pick. My favorite song of all time.
Yep.
I love it.
Number one for you, Sean.
Number one, I have to go all out crazy 80s for this. And re-watching this movie for the show reignited my love for this movie. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid. But it also reignited my love for the score of it. And this is RoboCop by Basil Palladores. In particular, the cocaine shootout scene. It's gotta be. It's just, I mean, like the theme of it, the RoboCop's like theme, like even just playing over the Blu-ray or DVD menu screen, I'm just jamming out to it before I even start the movie. And when it's that climactic cocaine shootout scene, it's just the best. That is just pure 80s. That is Verhoeven just going nuts. And with the music over it, it makes me want to go shoot up a cocaine warehouse.
POV.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me feel that way. So yeah, man, I can't get enough of that score. I can't get enough of that movie. So RoboCop, Basil Palladores.
Great call. AJ, number one.
The moment we said we were going to do this, there was one thing that came to mind for me, and it's Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon soundtrack, and that's Michael Kamen. Is that right?
It's Michael Kamen, Eric Clapton, and David Sanborn. David Sanborn's a saxophonist. He's like a jazz sax player as well. It's like a super group of soundtrack.
Oh wow.
It's amazing because I know you got Slow Hand in there, and it's that there's that moment in particular is when you see Martin Riggs basically. The guy must have that debate every single night, so I can only imagine why he's in the mood that he's in every day. There, he's just sitting there constantly, just flirting with that gun and that hollow tip bullet every single night, and you just hear that slow Eric Clapton hand.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep
guys.
going.
And then, like, when they do come back around, even it's like, Riggs. Or no, it's Murtaugh. They got your daughter. It's like, they got my daughter. And it's just,
bitch.
woo, woo. Like, it's go spit. And that's, like, that's the kind of stuff that, with sirens going in the back, police sirens, like it's just part of the song, like just shots from a 9mm and a snub nose, like it's just part of the songs.
Yeah.
It's Lethal Weapon for me all day, and I hope you didn't think I was going to be pandering to you with like that choice, because it's
Not at all.
it was one of the first movies. I think it was one of my first suggestions
Yeah.
what we did
Oh,
on
yes.
this
It was
movie
like our
was
third
Lethal Weapon
movie or something like
and
that.
It's so good. It's all so good. So
And
yeah.
that I'm glad you picked that, because that is usually the movie I picture in my head when I watch your POVs. For some reason, that's just the movie I pick.
Yeah.
But
It's definitely on the mood board.
Cobra for me, man.
It's up there on your Pinterest.
channeling. Yeah, it's up there on the mood board. Yeah.
all right, well, we got the Sunglasses Kid with us. He is our special guest. He's going to give us his number one music moment in movie history. What do you got?
For me, it's my favorite film of all time, which is a cliche, but it's Blade Runner.
Yep.
The soundtrack is just the perfect like mix of score, but it's got so much sound design in the soundtrack itself that when you listen to it in isolation, you realize things like sirens and bleeps and blops that you think are happening in the movie are actually in the score, that it's Vangelis doing it. And like the scene that's just very iconic, going back to like a saxophone led moment, is the love theme. So it's when Rachel's just saved Deckard from being shot by one of the replicants, and they're back at the apartment, and she sits down at the piano, and this saxophone theme starts out. It's which sounds a lot like You're Too Good to Be True, Can't Take My Eyes Off You, which is my own theory, but I think there's something there about the whole theme of eyes throughout that movie.
Sure.
And there's a moment where the kind of saxophone finishes, there's a kind of ambient like tone, and Rachel starts playing the piano to see if it's really a skill she has or whether it's just a fake memory. And it's in the same key as the score, so it kind of weaves in and out. So it's this perfect marriage of like music on the diegetic music and the non-diegetic music, to go back to those terms. And it's just, it creates this amazing atmosphere. And then there's the slightly creepy bit where Harrison Ford won't let her out the apartment and sort of smashes the door and kisses her, where the music sort of descends down and creates this brief moment of tension, and then it pulls it back with the saxophone melody again. And it's super cheesy in some ways, but it's so perfect, and it's just, that whole score is just works so perfectly with that movie, and it's my favorite movie of all time.
Great pick, man.
Yeah.
Now I want to go watch it.
Yeah,
again.
same.
Again, a movie surprisingly we've not done yet. So
I know.
and that's the best part about this podcast, is we are never going to run out of movies, especially good ones like that. So,
Yeah.
well, hey, listen, everybody, you got to check out the Sunglasses Kid if you haven't already. Find him on Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. Check him out on Spotify. A Major Heist, the new single just came out. It's absolutely incredible. And I have one request for you before we let you go. You can say maybe, and that's totally fine, just so that I can live the rest of my life and tell my daughter that you said maybe to this. But I wrote our theme song on GarageBand to give it like a Stranger Things 80s vibe, and people love it. They're like, wow, I want to download it. It's so good. It's not good. It's really, I listened to you and I'm like, yeah, I wish it could sound like that. So if someday, if you ever want to get into it and you want to write you want to rewrite our theme song, it's right up your alley. I would give anything if you would just say maybe, and I'll tell my daughter that you said maybe someday.
Definitely, I'll do it for you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
The only maybe is when. But yeah,
Oh,
there you
man.
go.
we'll see if we can get it done for you. Yeah,
We
yeah,
got to
for
get
sure.
you
Let's
before
talk.
you become this famous composer in a famous movie that's about to come out. So
Don't
By
worry,
the
you
way,
got me.
I'm very excited about that, and can't wait to see what that is. So we'll definitely have you back on when that happens.
Oh yeah, the movie. Yeah, I'd love to.
yeah.
Congrats on all the the virality, the success, man.
Thank
you
you.
know, finding you is a treat, and like when you just come across your your material on Instagram. So yeah, thanks again, and yeah, it's great having you here, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate you.